Hey everyone, so today I have Paul in the live stream and we're gonna talk about switching from data engineering to something like SWE or machine learning engineering. We're just gonna figure out a strategy for this because he works at data engineering. Actually, Paul, you want to give a background and stuff like data and like where did you go to school? What kind of stuff did you learn? I know you're in your master's at Georgia Tech
Uh,
right now. Yeah.
yeah, so like I went to school at like a pretty mediocre school, like top 200 type public state school, whatever, because I couldn't get money for anywhere else. But yeah, I mean, I'd say I learned a pretty good amount of stuff. We learned a lot of like CS theory, the data structures, databases, all that stuff that you normally take. And then we also had like a few engineering classes, like electrical type engineering or computer engineering classes. So like a few hardware classes, embedded systems and stuff like that. Um, it was like mostly just standard. I feel like most of the schools teach pretty much the same stuff. And now I'm doing my master's in like specializing in machine learning at Georgia Tech.
Okay, so you went to state school. State school. It was in the Midwest, right? State
Yeah,
school.
yeah. Like I have good like GPA and stuff though, so I don't think it's like too terrible. I don't think
Yeah.
it's like good, but I don't think it's like the worst thing because I know a lot of people like will go like Berkeley and get like a 3.2. I feel like that's like worse than state school 3.9, but I
Hmm.
don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
So we went to state school in the Midwest. Good GPA. Traditional computer science degree.
It was technically computer science and engineering, but basically, yeah.
Did you do any internships?
Yeah, I did like 3 cycles at a company. We had like co-ops. We do like the Waterloo co-ops where they like take off school for a few semesters, but we only do three, they do six. And our school's like 4 years instead of five.
Um, what kind of work did you do in these co-ops?
Uh, to be honest, like it was like similar to like data engineer, but I pretty much did nothing. I just sat and did nothing for the entire time.
That's what
So I didn't
happens
really learn.
sometimes. Similar
Yeah,
to
but honestly, like with how generic the title is, it was just IT intern. I could probably just spin it to
okay,
say I did whatever because they just named all their interns that. So I could probably spin it because they have like software engineer stuff there too. So I could probably just spin it to whatever.
okay. So state school, bachelor's in the Midwest. Did a few co-ops. Did you do any extracurriculars other than that? Like
Um,
competitions. Um,
Not since high school.
okay.
I did like math comps in high school, but I stopped in college. Well, like middle school and high school. I stopped in
Well,
college because like yeah, there's not that many of them unless you go to good school.
what about like hackathons and stuff like that? Did you do any of those?
I went to one, but I didn't really like. I didn't really know what was going on. I just kind of went to it just to see what was up. I didn't like do anything there.
I see. When it comes to high school. Okay, now you're doing your masters in Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Okay, what's a data engineering role, anyways? Honestly, like what do you
I
do
think
there?
so. Like a lot of what I'm doing now is just like building out pipelines. So just like we use Argo and Airflow, depending like 'cause
Okay,
we have basically our company's like two companies merged. So we use Argo and Airflow. Um, but yeah, basically just building out like the ETL workflows for those.
so what does that
Sometimes
actually
creating
look like?
dashboards.
Like
Like basically just you like write SQL code and then you create like JSON templates. At least with Airflow,
mhm.
the way we have it set up, and then we have like a migrate Python script. It's like an in-house script that just does everything else. So like occasionally tweaking that.
Okay,
Uh, and then also I was working on an ML project for a little bit, but we finished it, so there's not really much more to do on that.
okay,
Uh, we were like creating optimizations for credit unions to like make have less manual application review. So I was working a lot on that, like on the creating the model and stuff.
okay.
So that was just kind of like a side project there. It wasn't really data engineering though.
I see. So you're kind of considering switching into MLE, where's machine learning engineer or software engineer. And you probably prefer machine learning so far?
I mean, probably just because like if like otherwise I feel like my master is kind of like wasting time. But I mean, I'll probably take either. I just like the data stuff is so boring. It's like so repetitive.
Yeah. Let me think about it. Cause yeah, I pretty much only could give advice going to software engineer, but then we could explore machine learning engineer. I don't know many people who are actually machine learning engineers. Um,
Yeah, I think a lot of those are like PhDs.
yeah, but what I am noticing now though is they're not becoming PhDs anymore. Like machine learning engineer role is becoming more like application layer stuff. So
Yeah, yeah, that's what I've noticed too. Is like a lot of them are just like basically SUI, but just with the title of Emily.
yeah, and you're gonna so there's like the research portion of it, right? Most of these companies there's a research portion of it, and then there's the application layer. So building applications that leverage the AI, and both need to be in the company. Otherwise, why would you build this model if it's like GPT, the research
Hmm.
portion? Like now, OpenAI, most of their engineers are working on application layer stuff. Like how do you serve these models? How do you build good chat apps? All these GPTs and stuff. Like all these new features help drive the research. Like if they just did the research without building this application layer stuff, they would have never popped off like that, right?
Yeah, I think like the research stuff is cool to me. I just think it's more PhD type, at least in short term, maybe like in 10 years or something. But I know like a lot of like the research stuff is basically like researching optimizations. There's like a lot of math, so I think I'd be good at it, but I'm not gonna do a PhD. It's like too much work.
Yeah. So I think yeah, since I agree, like I think if we talk about moving from data engineer to SWE, I think that's a good
Yeah,
and then transition maybe to a machine learning engineer because I think
yeah.
these days
It's like Sui that works on an ML team. You could probably transition a lot more easily, like just
exactly.
within your own team or org or whatever.
So since you're working at data engineer, I would probably think about it in a few step process of maybe going from data engineering to software engineer. But maybe if I would apply for both, so maybe you could skip.
Yeah,
But one transition that's kind of smooth is like, yeah, maybe working at data edge and then maybe you switch over to software engineer and then focus in on machine learning engineer. Because the way
yeah,
I see it too is like things, SWE is a bit more general and you learn a lot of things that could apply to machine learning engineer that will help you become a better machine learning engineer as well. Like
yeah. I agree.
understanding the whole ecosystem of how software is built, how software is deployed, how software is used at scale is important for a machine learning engineer, especially one that's working on the app layer, right?
Yeah, I agree. I also think like it's easier to transition from like with a master's in ML from SUI to MLE from than like data to MLE, most
Yeah,
likely at least. I would guess that.
yeah. So let's just talk about your experience right now. So if we wanted to get into software engineering, let's just talk about your experience. Let's start off with the back end. So, what databases are you familiar with?
Uh, like Postgres, Redshift, SQL Server, I guess, but no one really uses that. Um, I've used I've used like Mongo a little bit, but not. I wouldn't say I'm like super good with it, but it's like not that complicated.
Okay.
So it's pretty. I'd say I could probably like ramp up quick enough.
So how deep do you know about Postgres?
I'd say pretty deep. Uh, like pretty much any querying stuff is pretty easy, I think, and like optimizing queries. I guess I've not used like the Postgres CLI or anything, but I know it's pretty similar to just like running queries, just like a few different things,
Okay. So you're pretty
like a
deep
few
on
different
Postgres.
APIs.
Okay, you understand like the different aspects of Postgres, optimizing queries. What about at a high level like data modeling in general? Like taking like a business use case and then modeling the data. Similar to what you saw me and Alfred working through the hotel reservation. Like if I gave you a random problem, would you be able to
Yeah,
model the
I
data?
think I could probably do those pretty well.
Okay.
I think I'd probably be better at those than the normal SDIs that I've seen you like give alpha.
Okay. Pretty good at modeling. pretty good at modeling data. So yeah,
Yeah, I know like a lot of data engineering roles have those type of system design interviews where it's like pretty much just a data modeling.
I see.
So
Okay.
I think I'm good at those.
What about infrastructure stuff? Are you familiar sort of with um, or okay, wait, let's talk about this, right? So you say you're pretty good at Postgres optimizing queries. What experience do you have that you could write in your resume that will show that you could do this?
Um, Pretty much all of them.
Okay.
Uh,
But give me a
just like
couple of specific bullet points because what I want to get out this conversation is like this is all the stuff you know. These are some bullet points that we could add to your resume and make your resume fit the software engineer role.
I know like with that ML project I was telling you about, I basically like the queries that they had were just raw querying pretty much everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I just had them basically use like CTEs to do better subqueries, so it would not use as much buffer space in the like in the Python because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know like usually SQL is able to query between stuff better than like a pandas data
Mm-hmm.
frame can filter it. So I just basically rewrote those to do all the querying in the SQL instead of doing like a bunch of filtering in the pandas and taking like 10 minutes to run a model. Uh,
Okay, so your ML project has some good, like your ML project at your current work has some good bullet points that we can add to show that you know databases.
yeah,
Okay, and then you said your current experience helps like with bullet points, helps with this.
yeah, that was.
Okay,
What do you mean by that?
so yeah, just like your because what I'm trying, like basically we're saying your current experience will help us create some bullet points later because we're gonna work on your resume offline a bit, but we're
Yeah,
just talking about because I just want to know that we have enough content here because this is important, right? Um,
yeah,
the database side is one of the important parts of a engineer, especially one that's working. Like even for startups, usually this is the most important because in the bigger companies they kind of abstract the database away from you a lot.
yeah, that makes
But
sense. Yeah,
um,
I think like the database is like I mean, obviously like working in data, I'd
yeah.
say I'm probably better at that than the other stuff that they might ask.
But you're familiar with indexing and transactions.
Yeah,
Okay.
like forward keys, primary keys,
Yeah,
just basic index like indexes. And, I mean, like a lot of the tables that we have, we put indexes on like the timestamps so that they're easier to query.
I see. Okay.
Because like the way we do ETL is like batch loading, so it's easier than like
Okay.
not having because like we're querying on modified
All right.
timestamp.
That makes sense. Okay. How are you? How familiar are you with the infrastructure that hosts these databases, like
So
AWS
like,
or something like that?
I mean, yeah, we use AWS. I guess I'm not super familiar with, I guess, what's going on in the back end on their end. But like, I mean, basically, you just connect to the like you connect to the Postgres database with like the creds, and it just runs as like a relational database. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by the infra.
Yeah. Like okay. Are you familiar? Are you familiar with the different options on AWS or Google Cloud that we can run? Or pretend I'm like, okay, Paul, I want you to host our Postgres database. How are you going to host this Postgres database? What are your
I
options
guess,
here?
I guess I'm, I guess I'm not familiar with that. Then I
Okay.
know there's like, I know we have Redshift and Postgres. I don't know. I don't think that answers your question though.
Yeah. So I think okay. Well, let's write. You should get familiar with AWS and some of the options. So, for example, with AWS, there's RDS, which is a service. It's relational database service. Are you familiar with EC2 on AWS?
Yeah.
What's an EC2 instance?
I mean, it basically just like runs like a file system pretty
Yeah.
much just on AWS. I mean, you can like when I remember in my distributed systems class, we had like EC2 instances, and we had like a map reduce thing that we wrote that was used like I think it was 8 EC2 instances or maybe four, and basically just having like a master slave architecture where it would
Yeah.
like have them run like through RPC
I see.
the the map reduce on different chunks of like the text.
Okay. So you're saying EC2 is just a file system, or
Uh, I mean, I'm not sure.
yeah. So EC2 is just a way to rent a server on AWS. So you can pick sizes of the server. It's like different servers with different sizes. So traditionally, like if I started a company, right, I have to, if I want to host a server, I spin up a server, I connect it to the internet, maybe I expose my IP address to the public, and now I have a server, right?
Yeah,
But with Amazon, you could just you could just go on AWS and spin up your own server. You could choose the size, CPU, the RAM. That's what the EC2 service is allows you to do.
yeah. I mean, I guess I just didn't explain it well, but yeah, I kind of knew that.
Yeah,
Like how to start up and how to spin up an EC2. I
yeah,
just I don't think I explained it well.
yeah. Okay, so yeah, it's basically EC2 allows you to rent services. That's what AWS is essentially just doing, right? It's allowing you to rent servers on their cloud. Like
Yeah,
every time, like when you spin up a Postgres database, what is it doing? It's spinning up a server. It's installing Postgres onto that server, and then exposing that IP address, and then allowing you to access that server using some credentials, right?
yeah,
Like with any service on AWS, essentially what you're doing is spinning up some server, downloading whatever software. It could be like Postgres, it could be like Dynamo, it could be like Mongo, right? Um, so yeah, I would say with AWS here, I would say in your resume you should get familiar with it and maybe do a project where you spin up some AWS instance and try to host Postgres on that AWS instance. That just shows like you kind of understand how the infra works, how to connect to it, how to set it up. You're familiar with the console.
yeah. So
That
I
makes
could
sense.
I could just make like I guess what a project that would work on that would be like a website maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, take a small, build like a small, yeah. Any project where you host the whole thing on AWS. Like for AWS, you can use like the different services to you can use like RDS. RDS is relational database service,
Yeah,
and in RDS you could choose the database you want. You could be like Postgres. You could use like MariaDB. You could use like MySQL. Um, but that's how you host relational databases in AWS. And what it does under the hood is essentially just spins up an EC2 instance and downloads whatever you choose, which is like Postgres, and then like a has like a Postgres daemon or whatever running on that server, and it stores all the files in there as well. Like databases store stuff onto the file system, right?
yeah,
So it just uses that whole EC2 instance to or that server and runs everything there. Um, I mean, it's a bit smarter than that because there's other things like replication, um,
yeah, for
master
sure.
slave, all that stuff. Like it handles that all under the hood. That's what they provide as a service. But um, yeah, I'll just get used to that. Or like spin up, like have a project where you just spin up a random RDS server.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, how familiar are you with REST APIs?
I mean, I know like get post, but uh uh I forget that. I'd say what's the other one? Delete. Yeah, delete.
Yeah.
Like I know what they do. I don't really know how they work under the hood. I don't know if you need to know that.
How familiar are you with networking?
I just took a networking class, so I'd say like right now I'm probably like at the most familiar I can be with it.
Okay, so what are the things you know, like DNS, HTTP?
I mean, yeah, those are working on like the application layer. DNS basically just like it's kind of like I mean I know it doesn't actually function as a hash map, but it's basically just like a hash map of website URL to IP to access. Uh, HTTP is just like the routing protocol, and then I know that like I know the how like the encapsulation of like packet headers works. Like going downstream to like network layer for I guess to transport layer first and then network layer and
Yeah,
how like the demultiplexing works, all that
yeah.
stuff.
I think for the case to just get into SWE, unless you're working for a networking company, I think just understanding HTTP. So that's the application. So I think we just need to understand the application level protocols.
Yeah, just like understand them probably like a bit more specifically.
So what are the different application layer protocols? Simple HTTP, I don't know, WebSockets, server side events, server side events, like RPC. At a high level, you kind of need to understand those, especially if you want to get into more backend roles.
Hmm.
So I think understanding HTTP, understanding WebSockets, server side events, RPC, understanding application layer protocols, having a breadth. But I would say if you had to dive into one, just dive into REST APIs, REST principles, because that's just used everywhere. Like REST principles
Yeah.
are very common. Um, so yeah, I would just have something in your resume that kind of signals you understand REST APIs, REST protocols, because that's how the front end is going to communicate with the back end, right? That's the entry point.
Yeah, I know like with my current role, we work with the data API a lot, so I could probably like spin something up on that.
Okay, have this in your resume. So how are okay? So we're just working backwards. So what web service like are you familiar with Django, Express? Like what web application frameworks are you used to using? Have you
I've
do you have
used
experience on?
I've used Django and Flask. I don't think people use Flask anymore. I've never used like any of the JS ones though, like the backend JS stuff. Uh, I'll probably do a project with that because I know that everyone uses that.
So you're more familiar with Python backends
Yeah, and like Go.
and Go. Okay. What did you use to Go? Like what
Like
application
that.
framework?
I just used it for a class, but like we made like a little mini website, and I could probably like get back up to speed with that.
Yeah. Okay.
But I
And
don't like I don't know how many companies actually use Go. Like I know it's good, but I don't think people have actually started using it really.
okay. So what I'm thinking here is okay. How familiar are you with like security portion,
Uh,
like
what do you mean by that? Like auth?
authentication, like OAuth, like authentication? Yeah, encryption, cryptography, anything like that.
I know how to use like the what is it like the Go auth OAuth. I know how to use the API for that to like make a login for a website. I don't know like I don't know the specifics of how it works or anything like that though,
Okay.
or like how hackable that is.
Yeah, security is like I mean you'll learn that at the job. They have like
Yeah,
linters and stuff that could catch security vulnerabilities. But let me think about this. You see where we're getting here, right? Like I'm just trying to see where like the breadth of understanding you have
yeah, I
because I
see
think
what you do.
this is all important stuff. Like if I want to hire you, I want to know, okay, can he? First off, I think where I would start is does the person know how to build APIs? Because when you're working backend roles, everything is you're gonna have to build APIs. Either it coming from a front end that's hitting your API, or it's like internal API to other teams.
Yeah,
Like building an interface for your service, your code is important. Everyone needs to kind of know this. Um, so I'll get an understanding. Like, do they have in their resume anything that could signal they built APIs? Because if I hire you and you don't know anything about APIs, it would be hard for me to know that you're gonna ramp up, especially on the job, fast enough.
yeah, that makes sense.
So I think having your resume, like first off, like that you built REST APIs and you understand some of the application layer protocols.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think after that, once you build the application layer protocols, I think the next part that's in every job is having a database. So I think um, having in your resume that yeah, like you could build ABIs and then you could work on some of the other backend stuff like modeling the data, making sure the data is modeled correctly and queries are really fast, understanding just the theory behind databases like foreign keys, primary keys, indexing, SQL, NoSQL, just a breadth of knowledge there, then I could have confidence that if I give you a backend task, you can like persist the data good.
Yeah, Yeah, I know. Definitely backend rules would be more. I don't think I'd do a front end rule. I'd rather just do data.
Yeah. Okay. And then like pretty good. Okay. And then after I know that you could build the API, you could model the data. Obviously, you know Python or whatever language you're working at. Then one thing that's important as well is them having familiarity with the infrastructure. Because if something goes wrong, maybe it pull you into on-call issue, and you don't know anything about AWS. Like it's
Yeah,
not the worst because it depends on how big the company is. But if it was a small company, that would be bad because I would expect you to be able to know under the like the the AWS stuff to debug because you might be the only person that we have bandwidth on to look at the question.
yeah,
There won't be
yeah. That makes
dedicated
sense.
infra teams, but so that's why I would say like I would prioritize on your resume REST APIs. I would prioritize like all the database stuff you mentioned. Then like a cherry on top would be understanding infrastructure. I think that would signal a really good candidate on the back end.
Yeah, yeah. I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked if people don't really have infra teams because like my company only has 200 people and we have an infra team, so it's like not like huge or anything. Do people like not have infra teams?
Like in my very first company, we did have an infra team, but we still needed to handle a lot of the infra ourselves. It's like
Yeah, I know. Like with
yeah.
with my current role, we do like our own DevOps because the DevOps team just like doesn't do anything.
Yeah. See. Yeah, like we have an infra team. They kind of set it up, but like our on call issues, we don't want to keep pinging infra every single time. There's issues like we need to be able to debug
Yeah, I think I'll
everything.
learn probably more about that because I haven't been on call yet. So like once I'm on call, I'll probably learn a little bit more about that stuff.
Yeah. Let's see. How familiar are you with the other parts of the ecosystems? Maybe like error logging and reporting, application performance monitoring, um, on call issues, and how those get triaged and notified.
Uh, I know we have like a lot of monitoring tools. I think
Mm.
we use what do we use? I think we use I don't remember what it's called. There's something weird. I've never heard of it. And then we have like PagerDuty for paging. Uh, but like in terms of triaging it, I'm not super sure on that.
For paging. How are exceptions and errors captured and then sent over pager duty?
Just check. I can just look at the Slack. There's like a Slack channel that has the PagerDuty stuff. I can just check it.
Because what I'll say is like, okay, yeah, like how do you figure out what goes with pager duty? Is someone manually putting things through pager duty, or you're getting?
No, no, no. It's like automatic error logging. I think it might be Datadog. I'm not super sure though.
Mhm. Yeah. Do you know much about Datadog?
Not really.
Okay.
And then it's like used for like monitoring uh I guess server quality and also you can use it for like timing stuff a lot.
Okay. So I'll talk about this. Okay, let me talk about this a little bit. So pretend I have a backend, right?
Yeah.
So I have a backend. That thing's running in production. I want to know when things go wrong in my code and alert the on-call engineer, right? So how would I do that? One very simple way, like pretend I wanted to build it all in-house, was that I can write my code with try and except blocks, and when an exception occurs in my code, I can I can build like an API that I can send errors to, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be like
Yeah,
you
that makes
catch
sense.
errors, and then you can like
Yeah,
post
yeah,
request the error to like some service, and then that service, we have a service that handles get receiving errors, and from there we can catch all exceptions in our code and post request to our error service or error handling service, and that error handling service could notify PagerDuty and then notify the on-call engineer. Like you,
yeah.
we can make sure
Yeah.
that service right. So there's a bunch of different softwares that essentially do that. You hook it into your code, and it has exception handling, and it sends it over Like when exceptions are caught, it sends it over to PagerDuty. There's tools like Sentry is one of the biggest ones. I'm not sure if you heard of it.
I think Century, you said?
Yeah, look up Sentry. It's like an
I think
error.
that's actually what we use. That sounds really familiar because I
Okay.
know they were talking about like renewing the license for that.
Yeah. So Sentry, what you do is you connect it to your front end, you connect it to your back end, and it's like it's more complicated. But what I would just say is like you could think about it is it just hooks into your exception blocks and does
Yeah.
it
You
like
just
you
like
can
call the API or whatever.
yeah like if you look at a front end app, look at the network tab, and you get to an error, you'll see that it literally is making a network post request to Sentry with like the stack trace of what went wrong, right?
Yeah.
And then it goes to Sentry, and in Sentry you have a nice view of all the errors and when they happen and stuff. They add value on top of that, but also they allow you to hook up into other third parties like PagerDuty to notify the on call. So that's kind of the process there of like how you catch things, right? Like you
Yeah.
could also catch things like by having like an email or like what's the old way of doing it is like, yo, if you have something wrong, just email this email and report the issue, right? That's like the
Yeah.
old
Yeah.
school way.
I think like whenever like, I think one thing that I don't really do is whenever like people ask me questions, I don't like if I don't know it super well, I just won't even answer like the basic stuff that I do know. So like whenever you just ask me that, like I do the basic stuff of like how like you just try accept blocks and it just calls like an API. I just didn't know like what the API was doing. So
Yeah.
I didn't like answer.
Mm, makes sense.
So I
And
think like in
then
a real interview I'd need to get better at doing that.
yeah. So essentially, what you do is it's like a library you just import into your code. It tries to be non-intrusive, where you just kind of import it, and then out of the box you get error handling, which is good.
Yeah.
So Datadog is a similar thing, but it handles performance related, like it captures latencies and stuff like that. It captures API calls, errors. Like it pretty much you can do anything in Datadog, but it's a lot of companies use it for performance monitoring.
Yeah,
So
just to make sure the site's not slow or like the
exactly,
database isn't slow or
yeah,
something's not slow.
yeah, it captures everything. Um, you,
Yeah,
it
we
can
have like
even
in-house
capture.
reports for a lot of that stuff. Like we have in-house performance reports. So it's really weird because we don't use like any of the normal software because we just have it all like in-house performance monitoring. If it like gets slow, it'll like it calls an error for us.
Yeah, and even with even with Datadog, right? You can set monitors and alerts, and that's a different way to trigger. It's not exceptions or anything, but we could say that we've seen like a spike in 500 requests, or we've seen latencies go up to like 500 milliseconds on
Mhm.
average. Like let's notify the on call. You could set up alerts like that as well, and that's more of like a app or a performance monitoring, because yeah, it's important to have application monitoring is like when stuff actually breaks, when there's logic errors, when there's like code paths that you didn't expect and there's exceptions. That's very important as well. Someone needs to go fix that. But then like on the meta level stuff, it's
Yeah.
like
I guess
when
the
is it
question I
slow?
have
Oh yeah, go ahead.
is like on the SUI level, is it like at least I guess it just in your companies, is it like abstracted away from you how to like distribute stuff, or is it like are you the one who's doing a lot of that?
We have to do it. It's like
Okay.
if I own a backend, I need to have complete ownership of it. I need to first out build all of the logic. I have to build all of the logic to make sure that the business requirements are met. And then while it's functioning, I need to make sure that like it's scaling well. How do I know it's scaling well? Like it's performing well. Like the queries are happening faster. If it's not scaling well, things are gonna start breaking, and I need to be able to fix that. I need to find and catch errors when it happens. So I need to know when the database is in a bad state, when errors. Like you just need to make sure that thing that you own is working end to end, and you have complete ownership of it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so like say like you need to like parallelize something, I guess how would you go about that type of scaling? Like could don't you just have to like request for more servers in order to like
Well,
in
like
order
this.
to scale something like that?
Well, it all depends on the issue, right? So
Yeah.
pretend the you've seen spikes in the response times. right, that you're handling. Like, what are the different ways you can debug that response time? Like, okay, let's analyze. First off, I'll look at the queries. What is that query? Maybe we weren't indexing it, like very fast stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
is the query, could we have indexed it to go faster? I mean, like that simple stuff. It's like, but then should you even add a query there, or should you update the query to make it better, right?
Yeah, that
Like
makes sense.
change the query patterns, the access patterns. You could think of different ways like that, right? Um, yeah, like can you change the application layer, anything to just you just have to figure out yourself. But I think the most important part is being able to know when that is happening in your system, and that's why I'm asking you all this monitoring stuff. It's like
Yeah.
you'll never know to optimize your database if you never get alerted on it or you don't set up
Yeah,
process.
there's no like graphing or like any way to see the performance.
Yeah, and then like with Datadog, you can see, oh, this is the exact query, or this is the API endpoint. Pretend there's a get request. Pretend we're on Facebook. It's like there's a get news feed, and that's spiking to like 5 milliseconds or 5 seconds. Sorry, that's right. I'm seeing that spiking on Datadog. Then what I would do is I'd use the different tools to debug what's happening. First, I'll look at the code. I'll be like, what's actually happening here? What's the query happening? And debugging the code there. Then yeah, I'll look at the queries and I'll use different tools that we have in order to dive deeper into it. Like if I need to run like a flame graph or I need to run like a query analyzer, there's ways to run that as well and just see what's slowing it down. Like Postgres query analyzer will literally tell you where the full table scans are happening and stuff, and you could just like index that if you need. But
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think yeah. You have any questions for me?
Uh, I I think you answered most of them. I think like the main things I need to focus on just to I guess double back is like, get a little bit more familiar with like application layer protocols, and then I guess I'd say I'm pretty like good with the DB stuff, just more of the inference side of the DB stuff. Um, and then was there anything else that you said it's like the main thing I should like work on? I guess I should just make like a project probably and like make like a website.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. First, I'll just say at a high level, make sure your resume kind of encapsulates all of these, and Chad, keep me honest if there's like anything I missed here that is we should add that will make him more hireable too. Because what we need to do here is make sure that your resume like encapsulates everything. Oh, testing and oh yeah, testing and stuff. Yeah, how familiar are you with testing, building out test suites and stuff?
Uh, I mean, data test cases are really easy to make because like if your query just doesn't return the right stuff, you, it's wrong. I guess in terms of like web dev stuff, I'd say probably similar. Just if it doesn't return the same stuff, the correct stuff, and then also like just like pure end-to-end test casing, I'd imagine would be
Yeah,
important.
yeah. So understanding the different end-to-end testing, end-to-end unit integration. So I think when it comes to backend, right? So unit
Yeah,
testing is probably the easiest testing. You just test the function.
yeah,
But those are two like when you're working on a backend system, you're gonna be doing more integration tests as well. So for example, how do I test a API? Do I want to unit test the different functions? Or do I want to actually make API calls to my database? Or like in the test case, spin up API and make API calls against that API.
yeah. Probably just call like the APIs on it because like, if you're
Exactly.
just testing the functions, you don't know if the API is actually working.
Exactly. So under like build a, a program where you have a test case that spins up your data, or usually you mock out the database stuff, but I mean you could do this in multiple different ways. But I think integration test is really important for backend developers. Then end to end test is more important for full stack developers because you need to spin up the front end and it's talking to the back end. But
Yeah, yeah. I know like whenever like on the ML project, they didn't really have anything set up for the the backend itself, so I was having to spin up the front end to test anything.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, you understand your testing. Understand, okay, people are talking about this right now. Basic knowledge of CI/CD. Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah, I know Docker and CI/CD, like Jenkins and stuff. Um,
Do you know Git?
Kubernetes,
It's good.
Git.
Yeah, you probably
Yeah,
know it, right? Yeah. Okay, no Git,
yeah,
no version control.
yeah. I think I'd be shocked if anyone like doesn't use Git that much.
Yeah. So yeah, I think so. Let's talk about this. Let's just recap. We just need to make sure your resume encapsulates all this. I'll send you all these notes. Like,
Yeah,
I'll actually send it to you on Discord, but I'll send it after this. But make sure you're, and I'll post this a different video too if you want to do it. But yeah, I would just iterate on your resume a bit and make sure you have what I would prefer is work experience that shows that you know these things. If you don't have work
yeah,
experience, fill it in with projects.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I get. Keep me honest here, but can I not just like lie on that resume about work? Because like they're not gonna call my work and ask if I did this particular project.
Yeah,
They're just gonna
yeah,
call and see if I like work there.
yeah. And then what I'm gonna say too is like this will just get you a basic resume, and then will get you probably some roles. But I think at a better case, you have projects. You build projects that encapsulates all of these end to end, and this shows that you could do this, right? So it's not just
Yeah,
like instead of just listing out the job description, you're listing out projects that you did. So for example, maybe like I built out this API end to end, right? And this API did X, right? That shows that you kind of like know these from end to end instead of just listing them out, right? Or you say I improved the query performance from like 400 milliseconds to 20 milliseconds and like move this metric in the company, right? That shows that you understand database optimizations without just saying like I did it, right? Like you actually have an example
yeah,
of you doing it. So I would say let's build a resume where you can kind of show that you get these different skills. Then afterwards, let's find projects that are good that have good bullet points that could show off these even better, and that you could actually talk about in an interview. Because if you just say
yeah. That
yeah I'm
makes sense.
familiar, if you just say I'm familiar with Postgres optimizing, right? I'll be like
Hmm.
okay, what? Just tell me a time when you actually have to do that.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. So all the tell me about the time should be on your resume, kind of things. Like, I did X, Y, and Z, right? Like it should be results oriented. The resume,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
this list,
I'll try rewriting my resume and send it over and see what you think.
nice, cool, yeah. Because this, if we just built your resume based on what we talked here, it would just talk. It would just be relisting out the job description.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it makes sense.
cool. All right. Hope
But
that
you
was
want to like the
helpful.
projects on there as well, not just the job description.
Yeah, like you don't want to relist out the job description in your resume. You want to talk about the results that you drove at your company that align with the job description because they people hire based on behaviors, right? Like
Yeah,
if you optimize a crap ton of like queries at your last company, you already have shown that this is the stuff that you do when you work at the company. I'll be like, I want to hire this guy so he can optimize my stuff. Right?
yeah, yeah. I might ask like my boss if I can work on some of like the back end projects just to see, because I'm pretty sure like he's like the manager of the SUI team as well, so I could probably just ask him and he'd let me do like some stuff on the side.
Yeah. So what I also one thing too is look at this. Maybe like, oh, I have gaps here. Let me talk to my manager and try to find opportunities where I could learn this stuff, so I can have it on my resume and I can have projects on it about it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah.
It's a good chat though. Thank
Yeah, that
you.
was good. Cool. All right. Talk to you later, man. Let me know if you have
Yeah,
questions. All right.
yeah, sure.
Peace.
Peace.